It was the summer of 1987, the kind of July that made the Nevada desert shimmer like glass. Robert Hensley, a 42-year-old mechanic from Reno, had decided to take a long-delayed trip with his 16-year-old daughter, Emily. They were headed east toward Utah, planning to visit Zion National Park and maybe stop at a few roadside attractions along the way. To anyone who saw them at the gas station that morning, they looked like an ordinary pair, a quiet father, a bright daughter with a camera hanging around her neck, and an old '79 Ford F-150 packed with camping gear. But for Robert, this trip wasn't just about sightseeing. It was about rebuilding something that had been slipping away. If you're fascinated by true stories that defy logic, the ones that keep families searching for decades, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. And turn on that notification bell, because what you're about to hear may just haunt you long after the video ends. Emily's mother, Robert's wife, Helen, had passed away 2 years earlier after a short illness. Since then, Emily had grown distant, withdrawn. The man who once tucked her in at night now barely knew what she dreamed about. So, when Emily mentioned wanting to photograph the desert before her senior year began, Robert saw his chance. A week on the open road. Just the two of them. No distractions, no memories hanging over their home. They left Reno at dawn on July 9, 1987. By 8 a.m., they were last seen fueling up at a small gas station outside Elko, Nevada, where Robert chatted briefly with the clerk about directions. Emily bought a Polaroid film pack and took a picture of a faded Route 50 sign, the loneliest road in America. It was the last confirmed image of either of them alive. Hours later, a rancher named Dale Morris spotted what he believed was the Hensley's truck heading south along Highway 93, an isolated 2-lane road stretching toward the Utah border. By nightfall, when they didn't check in with Robert's sister in Salt Lake City as planned, she assumed they'd lost signal or stopped to camp. But when another day passed, then too, worry began to spread. On July 12th, Robert's sister filed a missing persons report. At first, local police treated it as a likely case of temporary disappearance. Road trips often ran late, they said. But as hours turned into days, unease began to grow. The highway was vast, endless stretches of dust and silence where a broken-down vehicle could go unseen for weeks. Search parties were formed. Helicopters scoured the highway routes. Volunteers combed dry riverbeds and canyons. But not a single piece of evidence, no truck, no tire marks, no footprints, was found. The desert had swallowed them whole. 3 weeks later, a highway maintenance worker found something peculiar near a rest stop just outside Ely, Nevada, a torn page from a notebook. It was half buried under gravel, sun-bleached, and fragile. Written in neat teenage handwriting, it read, July 9th. Dad says this road feels endless. He doesn't like driving after dark. I told him not to worry. I've got my camera. I'll remember every mile. The note was signed simply, E. Investigators soon confirmed it matched Emily's handwriting from her school journals. The torn page reignited the search, focusing on a 60-mile radius around where it was found. But again, nothing. No vehicle. No tracks. Not even discarded camping gear. It was as if the earth itself had erased every trace of them. By late 1987, the disappearance of Robert and Emily Hensley had become one of Nevada's most haunting mysteries. Rumors multiplied. Some said Robert might have staged their disappearance, wanting to start over after his wife's death. Others believed they'd fallen victim to a serial offender rumored to haunt the highways that decade. A few locals whispered about an abandoned mining road near the Utah line, a place said to be cursed since the 1950s. Detectives followed every lead, but each ended in dust. Years passed. The Hensley case went cold. Among the officers who'd worked that case was Detective Marla Croft, a 29-year-old investigator at the time. The Hensley's disappearance would come to define her career, and, in some ways, her life. She'd later admit she couldn't forget Emily's face, that photograph of her smiling at the gas station counter, unaware it would become her final image. For decades, Marla kept the case file with her, even after retirement in 2006. And then, in early 2024, something would happen that would bring her phone ringing again. A discovery so unexpected, so chilling, that it would rewrite everything investigators thought they knew about the Hensley's final day. Sometimes, the desert doesn't forget. It just waits, hiding its secrets beneath layers of dust, time, and silence. And when it decides to give something back, it never does so gently. It was a cold morning in February 2024, nearly 37 years after Robert and Emily Hensley vanished. A hiker named Miles Garrett, an amateur explorer from Colorado, was trekking along a forgotten service trail near Baker, Nevada, just a few miles from the Utah border. The area was desolate, a forgotten mining region long closed to the public. Miles wasn't searching for anything specific that day. He was following a dried creek bed when he noticed something unusual, a faint glimmer beneath a sheet of loose rock. He knelt down, brushed away the dust, and froze. What he uncovered was the corner of a metallic panel, rusted but distinct. It looked like part of a vehicle door. Curiosity turned to unease as he cleared more debris and saw the faded Ford emblem. When he called local authorities, they arrived hours later and began digging. By dusk, they had unearthed nearly the entire frame of a 1979 Ford F-150, buried under a landslide, likely triggered decades earlier. And inside the cab were two human skeletons. Forensic teams transported the remains to the White Pine County Coroner's office. The truck's license plate, though barely legible, confirmed what some already feared: the missing Hensley's vehicle had been found. Dental records would later identify the remains as belonging to Robert Hensley and Emily Hensley. Inside the cab, investigators recovered several items that had miraculously survived. A rusted metal lunchbox, fragments of a Polaroid camera, a broken wristwatch stopped at 3:42 p.m., and, most mysteriously, a small leather diary. Though water-damaged and fragile, several pages were still readable. In those pages, Emily had documented moments from their trip, small, innocent observations about the sky, the landscape, and her father's quiet mood. But her final entry was different. It was dated July 9, 1987, the same day they were last seen. The handwriting was hurried, shaky. "Something's wrong with the truck. We pulled off the road near the hills. Dad says we'll wait until sunset, then walk if no one comes. He's worried. The radio keeps making weird static, like voices, but not words. He told me to stop writing and pack up. I think we're close to Utah now. If someone finds this, tell Mom I love her. Tell Aunt Carol. I keep forgetting she's gone." It was signed with a small heart and the letter E. That was the last thing Emily ever wrote. When the discovery hit the news, it reignited national attention. Reporters swarmed the small desert town. Podcasts, YouTubers, and cold case forums lit up overnight. One name kept resurfacing in every headline: Detective Marla Croft, the retired investigator who'd once led the original search. She was now in her 70s, frail but sharp, and living quietly in Utah. When she got the call, she didn't hesitate. She drove down to the site, parking just outside the taped-off dig area. As she stood before the sunken vehicle, Marla whispered, "You were right here all along." But something about the scene unsettled her. The truck had come to rest in an unnatural position, tilted, crushed as if it had been pushed down rather than simply sliding. The passenger door was jammed shut, and the rear window was cracked inward. To Marla, it didn't look like an accident. Later that week, investigators recovered Emily's Polaroid camera from beneath the dashboard. The film inside was degraded, but digital restoration experts at the Nevada State Lab managed to salvage 3 faint images. The first was ordinary, a blurry shot of the desert horizon. The second showed Robert beside the truck, smiling faintly, holding a map. But the third photograph was different. It appeared to have been taken from inside the cab, through the windshield, showing a figure standing several yards ahead of the truck. The figure was tall, wearing what looked like a ranger's hat and a tan uniform, but the face was obscured by glare. The timestamp on the film matched late afternoon, possibly minutes before the Hensleys' final diary entry. When the photo was shown to former park employees, none could identify the figure. In 1987, that stretch of highway wasn't under park jurisdiction, meaning no ranger should have been there at all. For investigators, the discovery raised more questions than answers. Had the Hensleys pulled over for help, only to encounter someone pretending to be an authority figure? Why was the truck buried under a landslide that appeared, according to geological analysis, to have occurred weeks after their disappearance? And if they died at the scene, why were no skeletal injuries consistent with a crash or fall found? Marla Croft felt something deeper was hidden beneath that desert floor, something that went beyond mechanical failure or bad luck. She requested access to the evidence room, determined to re-examine every item recovered. Among the artifacts was one last piece that hadn't been catalogued yet, a small rusted cassette tape found in the glove compartment, labeled in faint blue ink. Route 50, July. When technicians restored the audio, what they heard would unravel the case completely. At the Nevada State Crime Lab, technicians carefully restored the Route 50 cassette tape found inside the Hensleys' truck. The tape itself was old, brittle, warped from decades of desert heat, but the audio was mostly intact. Detective Marla Croft was there when the first playback began. For several seconds, there was only hiss and static. Then Robert's voice, faint but clear. "Okay, testing. I think it's recording again. Emily, you got it." A young voice, laughing faintly. "Yeah, Dad. Don't worry, it's working. Say hi to future us if we ever find this." Marla closed her eyes as she listened, hearing a father and daughter frozen in time. The recording continued, documenting their light-hearted banter about the drive, the heat, and Emily teasing her father for his sense of direction. But then, about 20 minutes in, the tone changed. The wind grew louder, followed by the squeal of the truck slowing. "Robert, what the hell? There's someone standing out there." "Emily, is it a ranger?" "Robert, maybe. Stay here." Then came the sound of the door opening, footsteps on gravel, and a low male voice in the distance. It was muffled, distorted, but the tone was calm, almost rehearsed. "Unknown male. Evening, sir. You having car trouble?" "Robert, yeah, something with the radiator." "You from the park?" "Unknown male. You could say that." "Pop the hood, I'll take a look." A metallic clank followed. Then silence. Marla felt a chill as the next part played, a sudden bang, followed by Emily's frightened voice. "Dad, Dad, what's happening?" Then came hurried footsteps, heavy breathing, and the unmistakable sound of a car door slamming. The tape ended abruptly after a few seconds of static. Audio experts enhanced the recording, filtering the background noise to isolate the unknown man's voice. They confirmed the speech pattern matched no known park ranger or law enforcement officer in the region during 1987. In fact, when cross-referenced with historical data, it revealed something disturbing. The uniform description Emily captured in the Polaroid matched that of a private mining security contractor, not a ranger. And during that same summer, a defunct mining company called Copper Ridge Extraction had been quietly operating on restricted land near the same area. Land not listed on any public map at the time. Detective Marla Croft dug through archives and found a small detail most had missed back in '87. A report from a former Copper Ridge employee, dated August 1987, claimed that one of their security trucks had gone missing along Highway 93, along with a guard named Clint Weaver, who was never seen again. Back then, local police assumed Weaver had simply quit his job and disappeared. But now, his name, uniform, and timeline aligned disturbingly close to the Hensleys' last sighting. Marla began to suspect that Robert and Emily might have encountered Weaver on that highway, and that what began as an attempt to help might have turned deadly. Authorities returned to the site where the Hensleys' truck had been found. Just a few hundred yards east, under aerial scans, they detected faint tire impressions, fossilized in hardened clay. The tracks led toward an abandoned mine shaft, sealed off since the late '80s. When the team excavated the entrance, they found the rusted frame of another vehicle, a smaller pickup registered to Copper Ridge Extraction. Inside were remnants of a uniform, a corroded name tag reading Weaver C., and something else that deepened the mystery: a second cassette tape. This one was unmarked. The unmarked tape was badly degraded, but restoration recovered several short segments. The voice was male, hoarse, panicked. "They weren't supposed to come out here. I told them the road was closed. The girl, she had a camera. I didn't mean to. I tried to push it down the ridge. They said no one would find it." The rest was static. But it was enough. The confession aligned with the position of the Hensleys' truck. It had indeed been pushed off the ridge into a gully, where a landslide weeks later buried it completely. Weaver, consumed by guilt, had likely driven to the mine and ended his own life before investigators could find him. For Marla Croft, the revelation was bittersweet. It solved a 37-year mystery, but it also unearthed a cover-up. Further digging into Copper Ridge records revealed that several local families had long accused the company of illegal dumping and land seizures in the 1980s. The company had hired unlicensed security officers to patrol restricted areas and keep trespassers away, by any means necessary. The Hensleys had unknowingly driven too close to one of those sites. A man with a gun and a company secret had panicked, and 2 innocent lives were lost because of it. That evening, after the investigation concluded, Marla Croft returned to her car and sat in silence, watching the desert sun sink behind the ridges. She thought of Robert, who just wanted a quiet trip with his daughter. Of Emily, whose camera and diary would become their only voice left behind. And of the man whose guilt had buried the truth beneath stone and time. She whispered to herself, "You both can rest now." After 37 years, the desert finally spoke. What it revealed was not just tragedy, but the weight of silence, buried under decades of dust and guilt. Some stories don't end in justice. They end in truth, fragile, late, but finally free. On April 3, 2024, the Nevada State Police held a press conference outside the county courthouse in Ely. Behind the podium stood Detective Marla Croft, her silver hair pulled back neatly, eyes weary but resolute. To her right was Miles Garrett, the hiker who'd found the truck. To her left, a forensic analyst holding a photo of Robert and Emily Hensley, smiling, frozen in the past. Reporters gathered, microphones crowded, cameras flashing. Marla began to speak. After nearly 4 decades, we can finally confirm that Robert and Emily Hensley's disappearance has been solved. Their vehicle and remains were recovered in February near Baker, Nevada. Evidence indicates that they were involved in an encounter with an unauthorized security officer working for Copper Ridge Extraction in July of 1987. That officer, later identified as Clint Weaver, perished shortly afterward in what we believe was an act of suicide. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marla continued, voice steady. While the individuals responsible for the subsequent cover-up are deceased, this department acknowledges our failure to uncover the truth sooner. For the Hensleys, for their family, and for every cold case still waiting to be heard, we say this: the desert keeps its secrets, but so do people. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then applause, quiet, respectful, filled the courtyard. Weeks later, the leather-bound diary recovered from the truck was returned to the Hensley family, now living in Oregon. Robert's sister, Carol Matthews, now in her late 70s, received it personally from Marla. She held it delicately, running her fingers over the worn pages, tears welling in her eyes. Inside, a pressed desert flower, brittle but intact, was found between 2 pages. A final photograph, too, restored from Emily's camera, a blurred image of the sky at sunset, streaked in gold and crimson. On the back, written faintly in Emily's handwriting, "It's beautiful out here. Maybe heaven looks like this." A month after the case was closed, Marla returned one last time to the ridge where the truck had been found. The excavation site had been cleared, the evidence collected, but the marks on the earth remained. Standing there alone, she felt a strange peace. The wind was soft, carrying the faint hum of cicadas and the echo of time itself. In her hand, she held 2 Polaroids, the last recovered from Emily's camera. One of Robert smiling. One of Emily behind the lens, caught in the truck's mirror reflection. Marla placed both photos in the sand, whispered a prayer, and let the wind take them. "You're not missing any more," she said softly. In an interview months later, Miles Garrett spoke about his discovery. "When I first saw that metal in the dirt, I almost walked past it. Just another piece of junk, I thought. But something, I don't know, instinct maybe, told me to stop. I never imagined I'd find a whole story buried there." He paused, eyes distant. "Sometimes I wonder if Emily wanted to be found. Maybe she took that last photo hoping someone, someday, would see it and bring her home." The Hensley case sparked renewed attention to dozens of other cold cases along the Nevada-Utah corridor, many dating back to the 1980s. Lawmakers reopened investigations into corporate misconduct from that era, while true crime communities across the Internet dubbed the mystery the Highway of Ghosts. Detective Marla Croft became a quiet symbol of persistence, the investigator who refused to let a file collect dust, even decades after retirement. In an interview later that year, she said something that stuck with viewers everywhere. "Some cases don't need villains to destroy lives. Just apathy, paperwork, and time." I think Emily knew that. That's why she kept writing, because she wanted to make sure someone, someday, would still care enough to read it. They vanished on a highway in 1987. A father trying to rebuild what life had broken, and a daughter trying to hold on to the world through her camera lens. For 37 years, the desert kept their story hidden, until a single glimmer of metal brought it all back. In the end, it wasn't justice that found them. It was time, and the simple act of a stranger stopping to look. This was the story of Robert and Emily Hensley, a father and daughter whose journey ended far too soon, but whose truth finally surfaced. If you were moved by their story, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Every voice, every story, no matter how old, deserves to be heard. And remember, some disappearances don't stay buried forever. Sometimes, the earth remembers.